it's Julia. I'm really excited about today's video. For years I have been making these Newsboy hats out of sweatshirts. The band is actually the band from around the sweatshirt. And mittens made out of sweatshirts. And the cuffs, again, are the cuffs off of a sweatshirt. These are unlined, and so the fuzzy side of the sweatshirt is towards your skin. And also the hat is unlined. I've been wanting to figure out a way and a pattern to share with you so that I have a lined hat, because I know so many of you don't have a serger, and I wanted you to be able to do this particular hat and still have all the inside covered up and neat. And so I came up with a pattern, and I have this available in my Etsy store if any of you are wanting to sew this for both the mittens and the hat. And this is the project that we're going to be working on. And this is a lined hat made from a thrifted sweatshirt. The band, again, is from the sweatshirt. And the inside is from a thrifted shirt. I used a flannel shirt. The mittens, too, are unlined. So the sweatshirt fleece is on the inside. I did face the top with part of that shirt, just so that the two match and kind of look kind of cute together. I also, in the packet, have included the flower embellishment. And in this video, I'll show you how I make the little embellishment to go on the hat. This is just on a pin back. On these particular mittens, I also added the flower to the back of the mitten. So that's another option for you if you don't want to use the shirt. You can add a flower to decorate it. And this, I did not use a pin back. I did stitch this on. But that's another option. I hope you enjoy this video. Let's get started. I do want to go over some of the supplies that you're going to be needing for this project and a little bit about the thrifted sweatshirt. I do have a guide on one of the pattern pieces. The most important thing is to get a sweatshirt that has a nice stable band. And I have a stretch guide here. 3 inches of the ribbing should stretch to at least 5 inches. And also I like the width of approximately 2 inches. It can be a little bit wider than this, but I would not go too much narrower than the 2 inches for that. And this is folded. Other things too, I mean, this is just fun because it has Minnesota on it, where I'm from, and my son used to ski at this resort. So, I mean, if you can find something like that, it's kind of, I'm going to try to add this to the hat so you can see that. For the lining, if you don't have a serger and you want to line your hat, anything maybe that matches, a floral would work. This is actually a flannel, plaid flannel that I found. I'm going to try to get this pocket on the back or the top of the mitten, so you can kind of keep that in mind too. If you decide you want to add the flower embellishment to your hat, you're going to need a pin back. You can usually pick these up at a craft store. Also, I am using the Heat and Bond iron-on adhesive, just a little piece of that. And I'll show you how I put my flowers together. And another item needed for that, both items for the hat, here is a piece of fusible foam. This is fusible on both sides. A single fuse would also work. Now, if you don't have a fusible foam, you can also use a medium weight iron-on stabilizer interfacing, but you're going to want to interface both sides of your brim, whereas this I'm only going to be cutting one piece of the interface piece and just going to be attaching this to one side of the brim, or one piece of the brim. Another item, if you do not have a serger and you want to finish off everything, is the bias tape. And I am going to be just using a pack of pre-purchased bias tape. You can also make your own. There's a lot of videos out there on how to make your own bias tape, but you're going to want to use the wide double folded bias tape, and it looks like this, and it's folded. I first thing I do when I go to a thrift store is I look for this kind of thing, and I found both of these at a thrift store. This one's 25 cents. Now this one matches better, but it is only the wide bias tape. It's not folded. So I think I am going to use this, and I am going to take it to my iron, and I am going to fold it. So I don't want to confuse you on that, but I'm going to use this navy one because it does match what I'm doing. And that's it for supplies. Let's get started sewing. I have my 6 pieces of my hat cut out of my thrifted sweatshirt and also of my shirt. 2 pieces of the brim and then the 1 piece of the fusible foam. I'm going to start with my deconstructing of my band. I cut my band off right below that seam. And I will be needing 20 inches of the band for my hat. The hat is sewn in 2 sections of 3, and I've got my 3 pieces that I'm going to be working on first, just putting my my right sides together and just pinning. And we'll be stitching using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And I've got my 2 pieces of my crown together now, and it's a matter of, again, putting right sides together and pinning. Now I do not open my seams on the top here. They naturally want to fold to the outside, and I just go with that and just lay them flat. And we'll be taking this again to my sewing machine and sewing a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Just over that curve. I've got my little crown together. I'm going to mark this now. You're going to mark the center front, and that's right in the middle of one of those sections. The side seams, which is right on a seam. And then the center back, which is again in the center of one of those sections. Now it's on to constructing the lining the same way as how you constructed the outer fabric. Putting that lining into the hat. Now my wrong sides are together, and I at this point am going to be opening up my seams. I don't press them, I just finger press them open so they both kind of lay flat. And placing a pin or a clip works really well here too in each one of those seams. I'm going to take this to my sewing machine, and I am just going to baste these 2 together just so that they stay together for the next step. And now for the band. I have my 20 inches. I'm going to unfold it. It's going to have a natural fold line, and I'm going to stitch my ends together so it's a cylinder. Now I'm going to fold it again on that natural fold line, and I'm again making this into 4ths. Just making it even. I'm going to put it, and I use pins for this part. I'm going to put the pins on the side seams now. So you'll have 4 pins, 1 in the center front, 1 in the center back, and then 1 for each side seam. Now I'm placing that band over the top of my hat, and I'm going to be matching the mark to the pin, and I'm using that exact pin that I used to mark the quarters in that band. And making sure that the mark is lined up. I will be taking this again to my sewing machine, and I'm going to be taking a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and I'm stretching that band to fit. My band is now all hooked on there, and I want to close that seam, and so it's finished off. I'm going to be using my bias tape for that. I'm at my sewing machine now, and you can see that I don't even pin this, but I'm just sewing it, and as I go I'm just kind of shoving that seam and covering it up with my bias tape. And that's going to completely finish off the inside of your little hat. When I get to the end of this, I'm going to overlap by about 1/2 inch, and I'm folding in that edge so it's nice and neat, and just kind of shoving it all in there and sewing it up. So onto the brim. I have my piece of fusible foam and I flipped it over. It's in the center of that piece, and I'm ironing this so that that foam is on the wrong side of my brim. And I do have a pressing mat here because you don't want that to stick to your ironing surface. And now I'm putting my little brim right sides together and I'm going to stitch that curved edge. Flipping it over, and as you can see, my foam lifted a little bit there, but it's all going to be attached and ironed down in this next step here. Just getting this seam rolled out nice and flat and ironed. This is also going to activate the other side of the foam, that double-sided fusible foam. I'm going to be top stitching this now. And then I'm going to enclose that raw seam of the bottom of that brim, again with just a little piece of this bias tape. Bias tape is on, and I'm finding the center of my brim and the center of my hat, matching those two. So this brim is attached to the bottom of my ribbing, or bottom of my band. Placing some pins in that, and we'll be top stitching this brim right into place. It's all attached. My hat is pretty much done. I'm going to share with you how I make my little embellishment. I'm using a piece of my iron-on fusible here and just drawing these shapes on. And I have the paper side up, and so my adhesive side is down. I'm going to add that larger flower to a piece of the sweatshirt. And I iron that onto the wrong side of my sweatshirt, taking that fusible or the paper off, and then I'm going to iron it onto another piece of my sweatshirt. I just wanted a little bit more of a double layer, just so it has a little bit heavier foundation for this flower. And now onto the smaller part, and I'm just going to use some of my flannel for that, and cutting that shape out, peeling that off, and attaching that to the top. So now I have 3 layers. And then back, I'm just going to draw this circle. And instead of applying this, I'm applying this to the right side of my fabric, because I want the wrong side to show. That wrong side has a different texture and color, and I thought that would look kind of cute on the top of this flower. And here it is. I added a button and I sewed my little pin back on, and it just fits right on your hat, just to finish it off. On to the mittens. I am again taking my cuff, same with pretty much with the band, and cutting that right below that seam. Now a lot of times your cuffs are joined together with a seam, a wrong, you'll see it here. I don't want that seam showing it, so I'm going to cut that off. And then I'm going to cut this band, this cuff down so it measures 8 inches. And that's pretty much standard for most wrists. This does have a nice stretch to it. I have my pieces cut. I have 2 of my tops or my backs of my mittens. And I cut 2 of my sweatshirts, or excuse me, my thrifted shirt too. And I'm going to just face this. I'm just going to lay it right on the top, and I'm going to stitch going around this. Now notice I added a placket to one and that pocket to another. I just kind of thought it added some cuteness to it. I'm going to be stitching this so it acts as one piece now. And this is on the top of my sweatshirt. I've got my upper and my lower palms. I'm going to be stitching that seam right in up to that notch on both of these. Up to the notch, and just taking a 1/4 inch seam allowance. I've got that part done, and now I'm laying my upper and lower palm right onto the backs of my mittens. My right sides are together, and I'm pinning this into place. The hardest part about the mittens is this thumb area. When I'm at my sewing machine, I'll show you, but you want to stop right at that notch. And then you're going to flip that thumb up and continue right at that notch down to the bottom edge. I'm at my sewing machine and I'm starting at the bottom edge of my mitten, and I'm going to be going all the way around and all the way around the top of this mitten. I'm going to stop right at that notch and I'm going to back stitch. I'm going to lift it up, flip that thumb up, and again start right at that notch. And then continue stitching all the way to the bottom of my mitten. Turning my mitten now so that the right sides are out. And again, this is an unlined mitten and the fuzzy part of that sweatshirt is towards your skin. I'm going to be joining my cuff much the same way as we joined the band on that hat, the 1/4 inch seam allowance. It'll naturally fold, and then I'm going to place that cuff on the inside of my mitten. And I'm going to just pin on that one, couple little pins here, stretching that band to fit. And I'm going to be stitching this in the round. This is the easiest way to stitch anything that's in close quarters like this. So I'm stitching with that band up and stretching it to fit. And my mitten is complete. I'm just going to turn that cuff over to cover up that seam. Thank you, everybody. I hope you've enjoyed this. I'm going to share some pictures. I do want to let you know also that I have written instructions in with a packet, so you can refer back to the packet or this video to give you ideas on how to complete this project. I hope you enjoyed this. Thank you, everybody who's joined me. Bye for now.